there are no sinners and saints. There are no
Come
saved and
on.
unsaved. There are just those who have woken up, and it gets bigger on the inside, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you wake up to more and more. That finished work is getting so big in my heart. It's just starting to take over everything around me where it's hard to see anything unfinished. I have friends who talk about Jesus returning someday. Well, if that's true, and I don't know. I mean, that's not my wheelhouse, but I mean,
Yeah.
if that's true, it's not to finish anything.
Robin Smit. Hi.
Hey,
It's good to see you. We've been chatting for 20 minutes before I hit record because we haven't caught up.
I know. I was
You're
a
one of
little
my
concerned that maybe you had already pressed record and I didn't know, and then I'm thinking, oh shoot, what did I say?
That is a good trick, and I do like to do that because I like capturing the hellos, but it's been a little while. But you're one of my favorite people, one of my favorite writers, and it's been too long since we've had you on. In fact, you've got your second book is close, and your first one we didn't get to, or the last one.
Yeah,
Let me rephrase that. You've got the next book,
yeah.
which is close, and we haven't even talked about the last one. But it's fun catching up about grandparenting and all the life stuff that's going on, the moves, the different places that you are, and all that's going on at TWS.
Love it.
Share a little bit, just for folks who maybe aren't aware or meeting you for the first time, what it is that you do.
Well, I run a hybrid publishing company. It started at the end of 2022 when Don Keithley, he's a master of great ideas, and so he suggested it. But he needed help getting his books back up on Amazon because the person who did it changed their theology and so took his books down. So he was in panic mode. How do I get them back up? So I offered to help, and then he said, "Hey, you want to do this full time?" I had turned my sermons into books, and I thought, yeah, yeah. And then Tommy Miller came along and asked if I wanted to do that, and I said okay. And then Don suggested, he brought up Destiny Image,
Yeah.
and said, hey, they started in their house, and it took off. Maybe you ought to consider it. And so I prayed about it, and I just heard the Lord say, will you put your books aside and just empower my writers, and do this. And so I jumped in, not knowing how to do anything. I just jumped in, and
Yeah.
then once I got Steve McVeigh and Malcolm Smith as authors, it just kind of snowballed. We have now 38 authors, 75 books
Come
that
on.
we've done since we started. And I feel like this was destiny. It was something I was just born
Yeah.
to do, just didn't know it. It just
Yeah.
kind of one
Yeah.
of those moments that just unfolded, and I absolutely love it. I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we met probably, I don't know what, 6, 8 months into that journey.
I think so. Through
Yeah.
Derek. I think through Derek. Yeah.
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 Mhm.
And Derek has written some. We've done some things. I've got a few chapters in a couple of
Yeah.
TWS books,
I love that.
and I love talking shop with you. Just writing,
Mm,
the publishing aspect of it,
mhm,
but I even love more talking about the nature of our Heavenly Father,
same.
and that is the thing that's the driving force and
Yeah.
who you are, the goodness of God, this
Mm,
Trinitarian good news. We were talking about, I have a through line. I only write about one thing, and it's the nature of God, but it's for the purpose of trust.
yeah.
And I always feel like I that comes out of your work,
Mm,
comes out of your books. You have this one message, it is finished. You actually have a
mm,
book titled, It Is Finished. I
yeah.
got to write, and I was honored to do it, the foreword for Behold the Lamb, which is the book
Yeah.
that I just mentioned, which is another book. And it came from you writing your dissertation, correct?
Yep. That is my dissertation. Yeah.
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 Yeah. So I'm talking to Doctor.
Yeah. Dr. Robin Smith. Yeah. Just
Because
Robin, but yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but that book. Let me read. This is what I wrote in my foreword about you. I wrote, Robin Smith is a wonder. Her writing is the perfect blend of arithmetic and poetry,
Mm,
wisdom and grace, knowledge and impartation. And I felt like when I feel like when I read your writing, that I loved when I wrote arithmetic and poetry, because I felt like they're both there. Like you've got your left brain very much and your right brain. You've
Yeah.
got like, as you said, it was for your doctorate, so it's well sourced, but applicable. At the end of the day, it's not just something that grabs a hold of this good news. This
Yeah.
finished work isn't just something that grabs a hold of your head. It actually invades your heart. And so when you read your work, your heart starts burning. And so I love the way you write. I love what you're running at. Break that book down. Maybe share with us a little bit of this one message that you write over and over and over again, finding new words for, right? New language for.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I hate sourcing, so that was not my favorite thing to do in the book. I'm not that type of writer. I mean, I
Yeah.
like being accurate, but I just don't like doing all the sourcing. But boy,
Yeah.
Matt
Me
Pendle
neither.
is just a stickler for that. And so, since he was in charge of my doctorate, I had to do sourcing, and he said,
Matt
"Pick
Pandle,
a
real quick.
subject." Yeah,
Matt
go
Pandle
ahead.
is over Global Grace. That's where you got your degree, correct?
Yep, yep. He was
Yep.
dean at the
Okay.
time. He is now president of
Yep. Okay.
GGS. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lots of
All right. Sorry.
changes there
Carry on.
too. So Matt told us to pick a subject that we're passionate about, and for me, it was the finished work. And I thought, let's just dive into sinless is our identity.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
sin is a finished work, and I got lots of raised eyebrows and you're doing a book on what, kind of questions, but it was fun. I
Yeah.
do believe that sin is an absolute finished work. So it just took a message of finish because I've done healed is our identity,
Yeah. Yeah.
and this one just it
Awakened. Yeah.
stretched me awakened. This one stretched me a little bit because it's just most of the time we don't see ourselves as sinless.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe theoretically, but not actually,
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I
and so if
had.
we're sinless as he is, just as
Yeah.
sinless,
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
even a question of, we're free from sin or I was a sinner and now I'm saved by grace kind of thing, but just I have always been as
Yeah.
sinless as he is.
Yeah. Our original design. For
Yeah.
me, the shift, the great shift in my life, and I tell the story often here, but we're looking at close to 16 years ago, where after a period of time, I had this profound awakening, and it was first who my father is, but connected. They went hand in glove with clearing my God lens to seeing the Father through the eyes of Jesus, through the life, death,
Mhm.
resurrection, and ascension of Jesus. But then also, hand in glove, a very stern and beautifully transformative conversation where I had to see myself through the eyes of my Father or through the lens of Jesus. And so, in that shift, maybe what was probably, to the extent we know who he is to the extent we know who we are. But the argument will always come down to who we are. That's where you're going to fight your battle. And over and over, he reminded me, I don't get a say in who I am. I don't get a say in how he perceives me. And I don't get a say in the finished work of the cross. And so the book that was birthed out of that is a book called Prone to Love, in which the first two-thirds of that book is who the Father is. But the last third of that book, I felt like we were tracking down this same disruption, if you will. The last third of that book was who we are, and the fact that original sin didn't even enter the mind of man. Like original sin was actually not Adam's idea. It didn't even originate within him. It was an outside source that
Yeah.
broke in and spoke a lie about who God is not
Yeah.
trustworthy, that was then complicit with us also
Yeah.
participating in some ideology of separation that set us apart, and we've been fighting that thing ever since. But you're right, the pushback was immense. The book I wrote was Prone to Love, and I was challenging. That title was based off of the song "Come Thou Fount," where there's a line in there that, to be quite frank, as an artist and in the church, may have been the favorite line to sing in the church. "Prone to wander, Lord, I feel it." It
Mm.
was almost like that was complicit with that was the foundation of our gospel, and we had to be. We found out who we are in that place, and so I was poking that. I was saying, no, we're actually prone to love in His image and likeness. That's the thing you were running at, but you were laying it out. You were making a case for it through, Jesus. Was it before He took the sins of the? What verse am I looking? John 4. He's the Lamb who took away the sin of the world. Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
Either he
this
did
is
or
what.
he didn't. Yeah.
Yeah, He did or He didn't. And what
Yeah.
does that mean? What does that mean for you in your life? What does it look like? For me, that was transformative. For you,
Oh, yeah, it changed everything because if he took, if he truly took away the sin of the world and death came through sin, then everything that you could categorize under death is also gone. I mean, it's
yeah,
just cause and effect, right?
yeah,
So you
yeah.
remove the cause, all of the effects are gone. So
Come
I
on.
have no association with sickness
Yeah,
and disease. Does that mean I don't feel symptoms at times? No, of course. I mean, I
right.
do. But then I have to remind myself, well, wait a second. He's the lamb who took away the sin of the world.
Yeah,
If he
yeah,
took away the sin of the world, then sickness is gone as well,
yeah,
and so I don't
yeah,
have to be sick. I
yeah,
just have to remind myself of that, because sometimes
yeah,
I forget,
yeah.
so
And you live in the, in the space, and I've had these conversations with God often, where I'm like, my experience is incongruent with what is true,
yeah,
and so this is that phrase we have in our house. I don't know, but He's good.
I don't know, but he's good. Yeah,
I don't know, but He's good, which makes room for me to discover my true identity.
that's right.
For me, when I was writing that book, I had a friend, and he would argue with me that I have to write a chapter on sin,
Mm,
and I was adamant that I wasn't going to write a chapter on sin. And you're thinking you're writing a book called Prone to Love, you'd
mhm,
think you probably should address sin. But I was so convinced that if you discover who the Father is,
yeah,
that you will discover who you are, and I hadn't found my way in by which to articulate around the word sin, because for the most part, every time I try and tiptoe into that, it was who sinned. It was how do we measure, you
yeah,
know. And I remember when I was reading. I wish I could pull the scripture up, but it's the blind man,
mhm,
and and he's asking for healing, and the disciples ask Jesus a question: Who sinned that
mhm,
caused his blindness? They're asking the question. This was
mhm,
what my friend wanted. Like, you've got to write about sin. And I was like, yeah, but every time I touch it, it's that conversation. Who sinned? How do we measure it? And when I
mhm,
read that and I read Jesus' response, his response, and I'll set this up first. Who sinned that he would be born blind? They were wanting to know, was it his parents or was it him? Because blindness in and of itself was a cultural sign that someone had sinned, that you were distant from God, separate, you were less than, you were othered.
mhm,
And so the question, this is a real existential question being asked. This guy's experience is he's a beggar.
mhm,
And so who's sinned that this man is a beggar born blind? Is it his
mhm,
parents or is it him? And Jesus' response was, wrong question.
yeah,
Wrong. You're in the wrong paradigm. You're having a game. You're playing a game I've never played. I don't
yeah,
participate in this game. I am here to reveal the man's identity. I'm here to reveal the nature of the Father and the man's true identity. Then he heals him. Now that's Jason breaking down what he said. This is here. This has happened right now that the Son of God would be revealed, but he heals him. And so in my mind, what he's doing there is he's saying, "Hey, wrong question.
wrong question.
Let me reveal to you who the Father truly is and this guy's true identity. Sin is not
That's a good
I'm
point.
not in the sin counting game. God's in Christ reconciling the world to himself,
That's right.
not counting our sins.
That's right. Sin's not
Again,
even in his language. It's
it's
not
doesn't,
even it's not a discussion that he has with us,
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
understanding that sin is distorted identity, boy, that really helped, because
yeah,
wrong behavior, which the church just capitalizes on sins, but wrong behavior just flows out of wrong identity.
yes,
So if you don't know
yeah,
who you are, you act the way you think you are.
yeah,
And so when I talk about no sin, no sickness, people get the wrong impression that, oh, so what you're saying is if I sin, I get sick. No, if sin is distorted identity and we are as he is,
Yeah.
whatever's true of him is true of us, there is no sickness in him. There
Yeah.
is no sin in him. There is
Yeah.
no death in him. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just that simple. And so when you look at him and you see yourself, it changes everything, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, yeah. It empowers everything. I've,
yes,
well, I did write a chapter, but eventually I went, okay, I'll write a chapter. But the chapter never addressed sin, other than to
right.
suggest that we are who we are awakening to who we behold. And then that may have been the chapter. If not, it would have been precursed by the story of my littlest daughter and how we were learning about identity,
Mm.
and that you aren't prone to wander, right? You're actually that came from my grandmother
Grandmother, right? Yep.
discovering, yeah,
Yep.
in
I
her
love that story.
late 70s, that she's
Yeah.
prone to love, right?
Oh, that's so beautiful. That
Passing
really
it
is.
down the generations, and then me getting to tell my daughter got caught in a lie, and we were learning that behavior follows identity, and so if you know who you are, sin gets settled anyway,
Yeah.
and then but she got caught in a lie, and my wife interacting with her, was essentially endeavoring to help her see who she truly was, and so my wife kept asking Eva, how does God see you? And she
Mm.
finally bursts out, "I'm a world changer."
Yeah,
And
come on.
she had a little necklace on, and it said "World Changer." Her aunt had
I
made it
love
for
that.
her. And it's a fun story, but the short of it was my wife had the epiphany moment that if you understand who you are, that
Mhm.
you will change the world.
Yep.
And for me, it was what we were dealing with is, look, we could explain the consequences of lying. Sin's real. You and I aren't having a conversation where sin isn't devastating. And I think that's why people they get terrified, because they've had a front row seat to themselves, or they've had things done. They've seen it. We live in a dark space. The world is heartbreakingly broken in some
Yep.
places, and so for us to have this conversation, it feels
Mhm.
casual, as though we're
Yeah.
living in some la land where sin isn't an actual problem. But
Yeah.
what we're speaking to is, no, we're speaking to the solution. That
Yeah.
you can't fix sin by pointing at the behavior. We wanted our daughter to know who she was, because we were convinced that if she came into alignment with the fact that our Father sees her as a truth teller,
Yeah.
that her behavior will follow behind,
That's
and that
right.
God is then in the restoring business, right? So
Mhm. So good.
anyway, it's a subject near and dear. I was honored to write the forward for you, and
Thank you. Thank you.
and the fact that we haven't talked about it yet, guys. You got to get this book, Behold the Lamb.
It
The
was a
art is
fun book
amazing
to
too.
write. It really
Yes.
was. Because we
Yeah.
don't live in a fallen world. I
Yeah.
mean, we really
That's
don't.
good. Talk about that.
He did a complete work, right?
Yeah.
And so there
Yeah.
is a reality of the world not being fallen. The world is good.
Yeah.
It's very good. His declaration of very good has never
Come on.
changed from
Come on.
Genesis. I mean, it's always been his declaration of the world around
Yeah.
us, of who we are. I mean, I don't have my head in the sand. I realize there are things going on around us. But man, when we wake up to who we are, first of
Yeah.
all, who he is,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And then who
Yeah.
we are in him,
Yeah.
it changes us. And I believe, David said, every knee will bow, not a
Yeah.
coerce, right?
Yeah.
But every
Yeah.
knee, everybody will wake up to this
Yeah.
beautiful good news of who they are in Christ.
Yeah.
Um, there are no sinners and saints. There are no
Come
saved and
on.
unsaved. There are just those who have woken up, and it gets bigger on the inside, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you wake up to more and more. That finished work is getting so big in my heart. It's just starting to take over everything around me, where it's hard to see anything unfinished. I have friends who talk about Jesus returning someday. Well, if that's true, and I don't know. I mean, that's not my wheelhouse, but I mean,
Yeah.
if that's true, it's not to finish anything,
No.
you know? He finished it all. So I don't know what that looks like, but it's
Yeah. Yeah.
definitely not to finish
Yeah,
anything.
yeah. I don't have any letters in front of my name, so I
Ah,
don't know what that. But that's not my wheelhouse either. I don't know what it looks like. I know I have some great friends who have great thoughts on it, but
yeah.
I love the lens because what you're talking about is true, but it's also the lens you're looking through,
Yep.
which is profoundly important, because I'm convinced that I love that. Yeah, this isn't a fallen place. It is good.
Yeah.
Actually, he said it is very good.
Very good.
When God puts a very in front of good, right?
That's so good.
It's like
Yeah,
when God says good, I mean, I can't get any better. And then he puts a very in front of it.
that's right.
It is, and it is this, we're in a restoration project from a place from a finished work where we are in a world where, and this is what burns in me. The book I wrote on sovereignty
Mm,
was was trying to break down what authority looks like,
mm,
and addressing a hierarchical authoritative mindset
mm.
where I'm doing my very best to express that the high watermark of love is consent,
Yeah.
and that it looked like Jesus at a cross laying his life down,
Mm,
and that is the most powerful authority that
yeah.
has already and is restoring all things. And so now we're not having a sinner saint conversation. This isn't the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It's not a dualistic paradigm we're living in. We're awakening to what has already happened,
Mhm.
and we're convinced that it's the kindness of God or the goodness of God or this other-centered self-giving love that actually ultimately will awaken hearts, so that when every knee bows, it isn't authoritative. It isn't some top down. It is a response to the design of our original DNA, of our who we truly are. We're just
So good.
responding to who we truly are. That's the what you're saying when you say
Yeah.
it's finished, and this isn't a fallen world. Am I right? Am I getting?
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, come on, the tree of life lives on the inside of us, right?
Come
And
on.
he lives on the inside of us. It's his life,
Come on.
that animates us, so to speak. I mean, in him I live and move and have my being, you
Come
know.
on.
And we just have to remind ourselves of that, because we can look around us, gosh, especially these days, and you look around you and you can see circumstances going on. And I'm one who, talks to myself a lot, like David,
Yeah.
I encourage myself,
Oh,
and I
good. Yeah.
remind myself, come on, you look like him. Your world is supposed to look like him. And my kids are getting it. We raise them, in transactional gospel, and
Yeah.
so that's all they knew, but now they're getting it. I hear them, and I hear the way they talk to our granddaughter. And we talked to our kids different when they were little, and we did the sinner's prayer and all of those
Sure.
things again,
Sure.
because
Sure.
gosh, you got to make sure they go to heaven, and all
Yeah.
of that.
Right.
But I
Yeah.
got to hold my granddaughter for the first time and just speak to her about the Trinity living on the inside of her,
Come
and that
on.
she is full and complete in him. And it
That's
was
it.
so beautiful. It was like, wow,
Come on.
this is what it's all about. And can you
Come on.
imagine if every family did that from day one with their children, what this world would look like, in front of
Come
us,
on.
you
Come
know?
on. I love that. That's back to that story with my grandmother where she was getting something in her
Yeah,
70s that my
yeah,
parents were getting in their 50s. I was getting in my 30s, and my kids, right?
yeah.
My son, when we talk, and somewhat our family language is sarcasm, and it's not mean, but we have a lot of
We do
we
the
like to
same.
we like to rib each other, and
Yeah.
and um, and so he'll at times, being an 8 on the Enneagram too, he's pretty convinced in what it is that he's telling you,
Mm,
but he'll make a comment like, "How could anyone ever believe they were outside?"
yeah,
Like, that kind of thinking,
yeah,
sometimes a little bit arrogant, where I'm like, well, if you grew up, if you grew up being told that, son,
yeah,
but I also love what he's saying. He's like, it's so foreign. The idea is,
mhm,
it doesn't even, that doesn't even math. It's,
yeah,
if you understand what goodness is, it doesn't even math.
yeah,
So I love that we are in this place of,
yeah.
of generational awakening.
Generational. I love that. That's been
Yeah.
my heart lately, is legacy.
Come on.
Not because I'm going anywhere anytime soon, but
Yeah.
just building legacy.
Come on.
Um, People talk about TWS, and it's like, oh man, you got so many books coming out. I don't have time to read them. It doesn't matter. Just put them on
Yeah.
your bookshelf. Leave a bookshelf of legacy for future generations, where
Yeah.
the only thing they're going to have to read that grandma or grandpa had were these books on the good news of God,
Come on.
and how
Come on.
good he really is.
Yeah. Amen. Come on. And there's more of them,
Yeah.
more and more of them. And thankful to you because you're getting to play a role in that. It's pretty,
Oh, that's been so fun. That really is fun. I love empowering writers. I
yeah.
do.
Yeah.
It's been a blast.
Well, I'm always encouraged around you, and would have loved to have had you in my corner back in the day, but it is the journey we're on. It was a lonely journey sometimes writing,
Yeah.
and especially trying to overcome all of the hurdles and the learning curves and
Yeah.
signing the deals that you shouldn't have and all the stuff that I've navigated over the last 15 years. So
Yeah.
I'm thrilled. And I didn't experience it a lot, but there were places that definitely didn't want to take what I was writing because of what I was writing,
Yeah.
and that was true as well.
I've only had to say no to a couple of books, so that's been
Yeah,
nice. There aren't that
yeah,
many, you know.
yeah. Well, that's the expansive nature of this message too. There's a lot of grace, and I know what you're doing is a little. There's some intentionality,
Mm.
but to appreciate the journey folks are on. Like I'm rewriting a revised edition of Prone to Love, which came out. The book we've been
Nice.
talking about came out 12
Hmm.
years ago, and I'm reading it as I'm not in any hurry, but by the end of this year, I'd like to have it out 2025, and I'm doing my best to protect the the space I was in, the understanding I was in, because I know there's an audience
Yeah.
that's at that place on the journey. While also trying to, there's places where I'm like, there's better language
Yeah.
that I can use here because we're on a journey,
Yeah.
and the language that I was using 10, 12 years ago has become expansive,
Yeah.
and I've grown, and I've got better language to define them, and so it's such a grace, right? This Emmaus Road Jesus, who's with us on all the
Oh,
steps and all the different
honest.
places, and
But people need to hear, your journey where what you were saying in that time because
yeah,
that's where they were. And I did that when I did the book Awakened, and I did when I was because they were just my essays from Global Grace that I turned into chapters. And only because I wanted to have a second book out because I read that you get one book out, that's great, but you got to keep the momentum and get a
yeah,
second book.
yeah.
So
I
I
know
thought,
that.
well, I
Yeah,
can do this. So when I was turning them into chapters, though, some of my thinking had changed, from when I wrote the essay, but I didn't want to change them.
yeah.
So my daughter suggested doing metanoia moments. And so they're little blurbs in the
Uh,
pages where I did a metanoia moment where my thinking had changed, and
that's
what I
cool.
believed now, so that I kept the original, but then added to. I think now I got to go back and do some more metanoia moments because you're always growing in grace,
Yeah,
right? We're always
yeah.
changing.
Isn't that wonderful? Because the gospel I was raised in, faith was actually tied to certainty. And
Yeah,
you weren't allowed to change. In fact, you were who you were. And I
yeah,
mean, you want to talk about a sin counting morass or pit to be stuck in. You're just who you are. So you try harder, and you couldn't. The idea that faith is the mystery of His goodness, that we
mhm,
continue to find more expressive language. It's the ever expanding inclusion that takes place
yeah,
in our heart, right? Where we
totally.
realize that there's outsiders that we didn't even know were. Oh, wait, you're growing as your heart expands to
That's
include,
right.
as it becomes more inclusive.
That's
That's one
right.
of the ways I think that you're growing. But that requires that you are able to go back and go. And I remember Chris Valentin. He said something 15 years ago when I was writing. Probably my first book had just come out, and he said he'd had a book come out and it'd been out for like 2 months, and he went the traditional route, which
Yeah,
takes anywhere from 6 months to eight
yeah,
months to finish the book and actually have it released and be on bookshelves. So that book was probably maybe as much as a year old since he'd written it, but certainly 8 or 10 months. But anyway, he's preaching. It's pretty fresh, but still got some space. And he's preaching, and he says, "My book just came out. I agree with 97% of it."
oh yeah.
And when he said that, I was like, "Oh, so much liberty," because I'm thinking this guy's 3% off, and only a year's past tops.
Yeah. Oh man. Well,
Yeah.
and you're growing so much that it's if the good news is good to me right now, but
Come-
is that really as good as it can be? I mean,
Yeah.
if it's good in my estimation,
Yeah.
gosh, it's got to be even better than it is right
Yeah.
now in what I know,
Come
or
on.
think I know, right?
That's why this. To be honest, that's why this podcast works, because that's the ultimate thing. My heart's burning for is hey. Remember the last best thought we had? Like let's see if we can top it.
Oh man, so good.
And I want you to go back though. You said something about some of the positive self talk,
Hmm.
and expound on that a little bit. I
Well, it
think
probably
there's
comes out of my word of faith days, when you were, you had to go around and get a list of confessions. And I don't do
yeah.
that anymore, because now I know that confession is just agreeing with God,
Come on.
And so
Which
sometimes
is
we
this is repenting. That you could use
yes,
the same word.
yeah,
Yes, go ahead.
yeah.
Yeah, metanoia. Yeah. Hey guys, I hope the podcast is blessing. Family Stories, our nonprofit, started 10 years ago. The goal was to make media content catalytic for an encounter with the love of God, and I think we're doing it. Had no idea what that would all entail, and in the last year has been blown away by what's happened around this podcast. Rethinking God with Tacos. The community that's gathered, the relationships and friendships that have been made, the conversations that have been had, the impact has been actually quite profound in our lives. And I'm daily hearing from folks who have been encouraged because of the conversations being had, catalytic for an encounter with the love of God. Listen, we're listener supported. And as this thing has grown, it's taken a little bit more of my time I love to give. And we've also had folks come along to help, and I'm so grateful for that. But it all works because you guys partnering with us and giving. And so I'm grateful for those who have partnered in that way, incredibly grateful. And in inviting you who are watching this now, if you've been impacted, if this has blessed you, and you'd like to see it continue to improve and expand, I'd invite you to give. You can go to afamilystory.org, afamilystory.org. We're a nonprofit, and so you can give there. You can also sign up for our mailing list, keep up with us, all things tacos, all things A Family Story, conferences, new books, Zoom calls, all of the amazing ways by which we're connecting the Facebook community. So thankful for you guys. Familystory.org. Sign up for our mailing list. Partner with us by giving, and we'll continue to have those conversations that are hopefully like the one you're listening to now, catalytic for an encounter with our Father's affection. All right, guys, back to the podcast. Love you. See you soon.
But I think sometimes we have to make ourselves do that because you can spiral. You get a bad thought, and I say bad. It's just a wrong thought. It's a distorted thought. It's not who you are. It
Yeah.
doesn't even have to be
Yeah.
that bad. It can just be a distorted thought of you're subject to flu season. Or subject to the common cold. I mean, that Jesus isn't subject to the common cold, so I don't
Yeah.
have to be subject to the common cold. And I know that can get controversial, but anyway, gosh, and you're recording this. You can cut things, right?
No,
Please
this is good.
cut
I,
things.
I, I
I
this
can
is the stuff right here. This is real
oh,
life.
real life. So that one thought can just spiral and
Yeah.
spiral and
Yeah.
spiral. And pretty
Yeah.
soon now you're bogged down by 100, wrong thoughts
Yeah.
about who you are and who
Yeah.
your original design is. And so, I have to remind myself sometimes of who I am. And, Jesus said, no one takes my life. I lay it down and I
Come
choose to take
on.
it back up again.
Come on.
And I heard a teaching, I think it was by Mike Miller, and he said, did Jesus just say those words, or did he say those words as us? And we also can say those words. And so
Yeah.
that one's become my new thing,
Oh my goodness, that's
my
good.
mantra in life, so to speak, is
Yeah.
no one and nothing takes my life from me. I
Yeah.
choose you know, to lay it
That is
down,
so
or I
good.
choose to take it back up again. In places
Yeah.
where I have laid it down, I have the choice to take it back up again and say,
Yeah.
no, that's not who I am.
Come
This
on.
is who I am. He
Yeah.
has declared me very good. He has declared me whole and complete. He didn't just come to save my spirit, and leave my soul and my body just, struggling along every day.
Come
I
on.
am whole and complete in every area of my life. And
Come
so
on.
that's what I do. I don't do a list of confessions anymore. I just go around saying what he said about me. And sometimes you got to do it more than, some days I'm doing it more than other days, when circumstances around you are screaming
Sure.
and contradicting what is supposed to be true and real in our life. Contradicting the finished work, then I just
Right.
remind myself even more, this
That's
is who I
beautiful.
am.
That's beautiful. I love that I was asked a couple of years ago if I was willing to die for Jesus,
Mm,
because what you just described is actually what Jesus modeled.
right.
And I was asked if I was willing to die for Jesus, and before I could think out of my mouth, I said, "No, God never asked me to die for him."
That's right.
And then it flashed through my heart. I was like, I continued. I said, "He's never asked us to die for him. He has given us the model. He said, 'Take up your cross and follow me.' So he's
Mm,
invited us to lay our lives down for each other. The idea
that's
that he's asked us to die for him is problematic. He never
right.
did. He's,
Absolutely.
so now the invitation is what you've said. We're operating in the context of love and consent being
Mm,
the high watermark, and the model being I lay my life down for you.
that's
And so
right.
now there's that great liberty there. But I love the way that you're reminding yourself of the finished work, even in the simplest things. Like the other
Mm,
day, I was drying off, talk about real life, drying off, getting out of the shower, walked by the mirror and didn't like the image in the mirror. Thought it's after Christmas, and
yeah.
I made some out loud comment about the mirror image, and heard my heavenly Father arrest me and say, "I don't like when you talk about yourself that way."
Yeah.
And it was just the weirdest, like it was a random moment, but even now you just get emotional because you think he sees us, and he's like, "Man, I want positive stuff. Like, stop, knock it off. This is, what are you doing?" Even in the simplest things like that, I want you to see the reflection of how I see you in the mirror. And we're not having those types of converse anyway. It's the
It's
real
not his language. Yeah, he doesn't
yeah.
do that. He doesn't talk down, And as we get older, we do it even more sometimes, about
Right.
ourselves, about our bodies, about our minds. And I
Right.
really purpose not to engage in old talk, where people are talking about aging and making all the
Yeah.
jokes. I don't participate. I don't watch all those commercials, so I do limit my environment, so to speak, so
No,
that,
that's good too. That's
yeah.
good too. I like that. I like that. The only old talk that I engage in is the generational old talk of grandparenting and
Oh, yeah.
and
That's
uh,
funny.
some of those things, which are in the near future for us, so we kind of can think about it that way. And when I ski, Robin, when I ski, once upon a time, I never heard there was a voice back there that would say, "Careful, this could hurt," but it's really loud now. I got to be
Oh,
honest, that
yeah. It
that
does hurt
voice.
a little more if you fall. Yeah, I get that.
I used to ignore that voice. Now I listen to that voice when I'm skiing, and slow
Oh,
down a little. But
of course, we probably should have listened to it in our 20s too, but yeah.
fair,
Yeah.
fair, fair. But yeah, what's burning in you right now? You're
Oh,
writing.
am I writing or publishing?
Oh, I know. Well, I know you're writing. We can talk about the writing first. We'll get to the publishing, but you're
Uh,
working on something right now that's coming out later this year, right?
Yeah, The Very Good News is the name of it. It's the Gospel of Jesus Christ, and I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the next one. I'm always more excited about the next book, but My Body, His Life, and it's just who we
Wow.
are as a new creation. So
Wow.
I'm really excited. I don't want my writing to. I don't know if I'm gonna say this right. I don't want my writing to get stuck in just saying the same thing over and over. I don't want to stay in a safe lane. I want to
Yeah.
grow and get more intentional in writing about who we are as the new creation, and not just what Jesus finished for us, but what He finished as us, and the fact that we're supposed to look different.
Yeah. Yeah.
He didn't do all of that so that we could stay looking the same as Israel had,
Yeah.
under the
Yeah.
old covenant. We are a new creation, and we're born again in the resurrection. It's a rebirth of a new creation. And what does that look like? What are we supposed to look like? Just struggling through life and going from one day to the next, or world changers, to
Come
talk
on.
quote your daughter, but what do we look like as a new creation? What does it look like? What was it intended to look like? Not what we see, but what was it intended? What did Paul see? I
Yeah.
love Paul, and Paul
Yeah.
is, I mean, Paul starts going into the eternal realm, he said, I knew a man, whether in the body or out of the body. I mean, Paul walked in both realms at the same
Right.
time,
Right.
and just because he mentioned it once doesn't mean it didn't happen again and again and again in his
Right.
life. And
Right.
what does that look? That's not happening all the time in my life.
Yeah.
I want it to, I had a dream the other night, and you can feel free to cut this, but I had a dream the other night that Steve and I
Steve
were,
McVeigh.
no, my husband, Steve. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I got
Okay. All
it. Yeah.
right. Well,
For
you were
those
talking quantum talk, so for a second I thought,
Oh,
okay,
no. Well,
but
Don's writing a new book, and so Don Keathley, I'm working on his sermon, and it's called Divine Partnership with God, Divine Partnership, and
uh-huh.
it's co-creating. And so he was talking about these things, the
Yeah.
seen realm and the unseen
Yeah.
realm. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so I had a dream the other night, and in the dream, my husband Steve and I are walking through this, like, I don't know, factory mall, and I'm buying something, and I'm telling the lady I'm 82 years old. And I don't know why 82. 82
Right.
must sound old to me, but I'm 82, and I can remember looking down at my skin in the dream, and it's strong and it's healthy and it's not all wrinkled and shriveled up. And if you're 82 listening to this, I apologize, but that's just where my mind goes.
Right. Sure.
But
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
strong and healthy. And the lady's like, You're not 82. And I said, I am. I'm 82. I can show you my driver's license. And I told my husband, Dude, I'm driving at 82 in my dreams. So we go on in the mall and we sit down and we have lunch with Steve's parents who died several years ago. And in my dream, it's not like they're not dead. They are. They're just we're visiting. We're having
Yeah.
lunch.
Oh man. Yeah.
They're where they are and we're where we are, but we're having lunch. We're having a conversation, and I woke up and I told my husband. I said, "Wow, that felt so real."
Come on.
I mean,
Come on.
come on. If there's no separation,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
What
Come
does that
on.
look like? And I want my writing to go there and always stay
Yes.
centered, but I want my writing to go there with what is it supposed to look like,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have an
Yeah.
answer, but
Expanding the imagination.
oh
Oh,
yeah.
two thoughts I have. Right. One is I love that that they were eating as well because
Yeah,
I've always been worried we weren't going to get to do that.
you'll get tacos, yeah.
But I also I love conversations because if you're talking about God as love, it doesn't take long before you're having a conversation that is you can't measure. We that's been the nature of the conversation we've been having. This awakening. It's a continual discovery that it's bigger, it's better, it's wider, it's deeper, it's higher, it's longer, right? This is the love of God that surpasses knowledge.
Yeah.
That he wants you to be filled to the fullness, and now to him who's able to do immeasurably beyond all you can ask. Like it's just you think you get your arms around it, and when you start to discover this love, it's not long before you start to participate with the Creator around what it would look like to live. And we had Tommy Miller untethered from time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not that we're ignoring the
No.
context of the day in day out. Obviously, this is a linear conversation taking
Yeah.
place, but I can feel the
Yeah.
crowd of witnesses participating in this. And
Yeah.
and my awareness of that is something that I would love to grow in. Right, the idea that I'm even there participating. There's something
Right. We're so
profoundly
connected. Yes.
mind-boggling, but your heart's exploding. Going,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's something true to this,
Oh, and
and
we see it in the Old Testament. There are a couple stories that really grabbed my heart. One was Gehazi, and as he's fearing this army coming towards him, Elisha says, Lord, open his eyes.
yeah,
And he sees the host of angel armies.
right, right,
They didn't just drop down out of the sky, they
right,
were
right,
always there. He just
right.
couldn't see in this realm.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
with Elijah and Elisha, and Elijah says, if you see me, leave. And Elisha does. He sees
yeah,
into a realm that we don't normally see into. And gosh, what's that look like? I want to see into that realm,
yeah.
on a regular
Amen.
basis.
Yes, amen. And there's a full circle here as far as, the journey of when you're talking about sin, you're very much talking about measuring.
Yep.
And so, without ignoring, this conversation is only as real as the transformation taking place around us. And so we're not having a conversation where things are ignored. We're having a conversation about solution, about one that's already been provided.
Yeah.
And so then we're not ignoring. We're saying, hey, because what I find fascinating is I don't know that you can have this conversation if you're still focused over here measuring,
Yep.
because this is a paradigm. This is a realm where you're having a conversation about a measureless reconciliation. That there's a restoration process or process that is happened and is happening. And so I love what you're talking about, because this is that this is where this is a line upon line
Yeah.
conversation, right?
Yeah.
Like I look at my journey and I go, look, I had to be set free from perceiving myself through a behavioral lens where shame and fear and condemnation are the realities that I have to live with, as opposed to Father radically shifting things till I could see him the way Jesus saw him,
Yeah.
and then begin to navigate into liberty and an expansive. I don't know if I'm making
Yeah.
any sense, but
Yeah.
yeah, I my heart comes alive when we have these conversations. My heart starts burning because I'm like, this is the gospel. This is the stuff. This
And you
is
can't have those conversations with everybody. And I realize now we're on a recording, but I mean, it's fun to imagine. Imagination. Malcolm Smith says, imagination is Holy Spirit's workroom, and so
yes,
it's that imagine we haven't dove into our imagination like we should,
yeah,
and
yeah,
just
yeah,
letting your mind wander, like when you were a
yeah,
kid, and you just
yeah,
let your mind go, you daydream, and
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. That's why I think it is the little children that
absolutely.
inherit the kingdom of heaven. Hey guys, so we have a conference coming up. It's our second annual family reunion in Charlotte, North Carolina, my backyard. And last year was so sweet. I'm really looking forward to this year, September 25 through 27. Baxter Kruger is going to be with us. So thankful for him. Damon Thompson is going to be with us. That's been a new friendship, and I'm incredibly grateful for him. It's going to be a time, guys. Dub Alexander will be with us again. Love Dub and all that he brings. Brooke Waters, whom you guys know and who helps put this conference on, she'll be with us. And Mark and Julie Appleyard, good friends of mine, dear friends of mine. They've been on the podcast. They're going to be with us, along with Michael and Bethany Wallace, who led worship last year. It was unbelievable, and it's going to be good this year. I'm really looking forward to this. September 25 through 27. You can learn more about it at afamilystory.org, afamilystory.org. We have the early bird tickets right now, so if you sign up now, it'd be the most cost effective. It also lets us know how to prepare for you. Guys, there will be fellowship, there will be worship, there will be deep end conversations and teaching around this Trinitarian faith, this beautiful gospel, this good news that only gets better, and the opportunity to connect again as a community. I'm so grateful for you all, so grateful for the ways in which we get to continue to discover and explore the goodness of God together. And I'm excited about the opportunity to do it face to face, September 25th through 27th, afamilystory.org. Come hang out with us. Oh, by the way, I'll be there too. All right. I'm going to get back to the podcast, but maybe
Amen.
we can talk about some of the influences, the voices that have impacted us. The fact that there's been so much language put to it, that you have the Malcolm Smiths and the Don Keithleys and the Steve McVeighs and the Baxter Krugers and the Bradley Jerzaks. And then you go further back and you've got your George McDonald, and you find all of these folks that have put language to it. And the fact that we're not alone, that you and I we do get to have this conversation and people
Yeah.
can listen in and be encouraged or or be a little nervous or a
Yep.
little bit of both. I've loved these last couple of years in particular, connecting with folks that would have been heroes, but have become friends,
Yeah.
and has blown my mind and just blessed my heart. But the show we do for Grace Awakening Network, Baxter Kruger and I do a show
Hmm.
and you're connected to that. And so these friendships that have happened. But what's most amazed me is you sit with a Baxter, you talk with. I'm going to be flying out to connect with Malcolm and Cheryl in the
Nice.
next couple of months. We haven't put a date on it yet to spend a Thursday morning with them.
Oh, fun. Oh,
And
that's when he meets with his young guys that he mentors.
yes, yeah, I got invited and we're taking them up on it, and
I think they do breakfast tacos.
that's what I've heard.
Yeah.
And these guys that even in our lifetime, these folks that have been navigating these waters,
Mm,
and even through immense pushback and
yeah.
cost to themselves. And here we are. I feel like we're in this season where there's more yeses in the room than nos these days.
Yeah.
And it's due to a lot to these guys that have been forerunners, Don Keithley,
Yeah.
as well. But maybe share about that, maybe for you in your life, and if you've got any thoughts or insights there.
Oh man, I love all these guys you've mentioned. I when I first started changing, Steve McVeigh was the first book, Grace book that I read.
Yeah,
And somebody introduced me to that, and then
that was way back. That was
yeah,
Grace Walk is his ministry. I can't remember the title of the book all of a
yeah,
sudden, but
and I think
yeah.
for me it was maybe 7, 8 years ago. It wasn't that long ago when
Okay.
I read the first one. And somebody had given me his book, and I've gone too far now for that person, but that's okay. They introduced me, and
Yeah.
so
Isn't
then
that funny?
yeah, it's so funny. Francois, um, I got a hold of the Mirror Bible,
Yeah.
had to hold it next to my real Bible, because
Sure.
I had never read those verses before, had no idea it was even in there.
Yeah.
Um, so I just had to double check, my new King James just to make sure. But that
I did
Francois
it
would
too.
make it up as
I
he went
still will
along.
occasionally. I'll still do it occasionally because I'm like, okay, okay, I've read this verse 300 times in my life. Okay, I got to go back and what does it say? Just so I can compare to see
I
it. But
know,
yeah, I
because
get it.
it
Yeah,
was
that
never there.
fearful. Yeah,
Yeah. And then I read one of Baxter's books. I don't remember which one off
probably
the top.
Jesus and the Undoing of Adam, or
No,
no?
not. I
Okay.
didn't go that deep into it. No, it was. It might have been Dancing with God or
Yeah,
something.
yeah. Okay.
And I told my husband, okay, I am terrified of slipping into universalism. I'm not so sure about this. I just, but my heart was stirred, and
Yeah, yeah,
so what I did is I put away everything that I had read, everybody I had listened to. Actually, though, Creflo Dollar was one of the first people that got me started on this grace journey
yeah.
because he did a message on, because I come out of Word of Faith, and he did a message on Old Covenant is due, New Covenant is done. So
Come
I
on,
got to hand it to Creflo for being the first one to give me the finished message. I mean, that
come on.
was, yeah. So,
Yeah, yeah.
but then
And
my
he's
heart was
he's
stirred.
reading the mirror now.
I
He's
know.
quoting from it every other week.
I love that. Well, so
I
was Jerry Savelle when he was alive. I know
wow,
that's beautiful.
wow.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. But my heart was stirred, and so I put away everything else. I knew everything Word of Faith people said, and I didn't want to hear that anymore. I didn't want to listen to their shows, read anything, because I already knew that. I just
Yeah.
needed to immerse myself and find out if this was valid,
Right. Right.
and I just kind of fell headlong into it and ended up in Steve McVeigh's chat room on Facebook, of all places, coffee room.
Uh huh.
And he was giving a deal for like a 50% off if you sign up at Global Grace. That's back when he was doing Global Grace. And so I said, okay, signed up. And yeah, I did. I head first. I fell right into it.
I love the nature of the journey, and so many folks listening.
Yeah.
there would resonate. You
Mm.
know, whether it's Creflo or it's,
Yeah.
Brennan Manning for us
Ah,
would have been, 24 years ago, Ragamuffin Gospel,
yeah.
where you read it and you're like, this is good news.
Good
And
news.
how come I haven't heard it?
Hmm.
And all of the, for me, Bill Johnson, to this day is someone that I'm
Yeah.
so thankful for. But I
Yeah.
had 10 years where I'd listen to him upwards of 5 hours a week. I'd re-listen to things for 3 times. I'm immersing myself in Jesus' perfect theology, and God is good.
God is good. Such a good book.
Yeah, and then you have these, these steps that you take,
Hmm.
in which, and He's there with you all along the way, until you realize, like, whatever language you want to put around it, it's good.
Yeah.
And and so I think there's probably a lot of folks listening, right? That, like, we have this Facebook group, and we have this group that we've started, where it's, all kinds of journeys
Yeah.
represented there. And what
Exactly.
I love most about it is the generous way in which we're making room for everybody in their journey. You've got sometimes opposing perspectives,
Yeah.
in the group.
Yeah.
Like you said, you have a friend who you've gone too far for.
Mm.
That's okay. That's all
That's
right.
okay.
Maybe it might impact some things now, but it's
It's okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's okay. Yeah,
But I love the tacos group. The conversations are great, Yeah, sometimes, people get a little heated sometimes in those
yeah,
and, but for the most part, people are gracious and the
yeah,
conversations are beautiful.
yeah,
We
yeah,
all come from different journeys. I didn't have much religious trauma, It was just a matter of learning a different way to look at something.
yeah.
And as I looked at it differently, the other stuff just kind of fell away. There wasn't really a deconstruction, so to speak, but
Right, right.
that doesn't mean somebody else didn't go through that,
Yeah,
and,
yeah,
and that's their experience and that's valid.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And for me, that word, I didn't like the word deconstruction years
Mm.
and years ago, but it was mostly because of most of my interaction with it was reactionary.
Yeah,
And reaction creates an equal and opposite
yeah,
reaction.
yeah,
And it was still in the same spirit of us or them. We just changed teams.
that's it.
And and yet, I find, that I've embraced the word, because there was also the reality is if you're walking that way, then
Mm.
I got to figure out how to walk with you.
Yeah,
But beyond that, there was also this group of people, which I feel is a whole lot of the audience, of tacos, is those who are absolutely in love with Jesus,
yeah,
but, could no longer live in the disparity between a good God who looks away at the
yeah,
cross, or a good God who is measuring,
yeah,
who forgives, but also, has a punitive or retributive approach to justice.
yeah,
And so as they began to, wrestle with what they knew to be true about the love of God in their heart, and what was the separation message being pushed
yeah,
upon them, they found themselves unable to stay. And that's a form of, to me, deconstruction, as a form of metanoia, as a
yeah.
form of walking authentic in the journey.
Mm.
And then the trauma is because we are so dualistic, and because Christianity can also be a form of religion,
Yeah,
which others, because of that, there's a lot of hurt folks,
there are.
but
When
but
everybody
it
came
is
out of
kind.
something different. Some people, I didn't even know what Calvinism was until I
Right,
met Steve McVeigh. I mean, that just wasn't my
right, right,
world.
right.
And people who came out of Calvinism, that was a heavy, heavy yoke of
Yes,
religion that
yeah,
I never even, that just wasn't my world. So,
right, right.
I
I
came
was,
out of the Bill Johnsons and,
yeah, 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 yeah.
Chris
I,
Valaton, that's a little different.
Yeah, yeah. I split the difference. Because I went to Bible college, and you always had one foot, having to navigate in those, because I knew what it was. I remember when I first understood it. I was in Bible college, and apparently I didn't learn it from the classes I was taking, which makes sense. I don't learn that way. But I'm having a conversation, of course, that's how I learn, with a friend, And he explains it to me. And when he explained it to me, I was like, I remember then thoroughly rejecting it. Like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You know, the idea that God chooses some and that the rest, that was the main thing, that the thrust that I got. That was like, that's easy to dismiss. Like, that's nothing like the Jesus I know. But aware that 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 thought was woven into our Western evangelical mindset, and so yeah, there's been lots of damage done with it, but here we are.
Here we are.
Here we are.
And you're a big part of that. I mean, you have great conversations with people, and you make space for differing opinions. I don't feel like I always do that well, but you are really, really good at that. And I've had to learn to balance that or to not balance. I've had to
Right.
learn to embrace that a little bit in publishing because I don't want everybody doing the same books,
Right.
and sometimes they may see it a little differently than I do. And I want to make room for that, for the
Right.
conversation that they want to have in their book. And it's hard being a publisher who also has a doctorate from Global Grace because, I want to be accurate on things and I want you to source it and okay, I'll let you say it, but show me where you found that. And, making room for those revelatory moments where the
Come
person
on.
says, it's just a revelation. I don't have a source for it,
Right.
and as long as it stays Christ centered, I am good. And
Yeah. Yeah. That's where I'm at too. And thanks. Where I'm at is I mean, I have a certainty, right? When
yeah,
I
we
talk
all
about
do.
but for me, and we all do, for me, and my certainty is that God looks like Jesus, and
Yeah,
that is his other-centered, self-giving love,
yeah,
and that's my cornerstone.
yeah.
But I feel like upon that cornerstone, then there's room
There's room.
for mystery. There's room for the different approaches for language. Will always come back to that.
Yeah,
You know, that is, hey, what is other centered love? What does a greater love look like in this
yeah,
moment? But I remember being in a church service, and the shortest version of the story, the leader that was preaching from the back, I was at the back. It was three services. I had finished my three services the week before, telling everyone in the room they were a spiritual giant.
yeah.
I'd finished with, you're all spiritual giants. And little did I know, he was about to take 600 of these folks down the road
Mm,
with a church split. And he finished all three of his messages with a whip in his hand and said, there's no spiritual giants in the room.
mm,
His title of his message was Now Get. You want to talk about a penal substitutionary atonement separation message that was fear mongering in every sense of the word, and very well delivered because he's quite theatrical, but heart crushing. It was really hard to stop, and I was on staff at the church. So, the long story short, I was like, Father, why am I here? Like, why do you have me here? And
yeah,
I had to get out of the space just for a second. Found a back room where Father, show me who you are, show me how you see me. That was my process. I got that settled. Came back into the room. When I came back into the room, and I tell the story because it really has become a ministry model for me.
mhm,
The idea that I'm not here to defend but to reveal.
mhm,
The idea that Jesus told the story of a sower who sows generously, willy nilly, as though the seed is more powerful than the soil,
yeah,
and that it will ultimately transform paths into rocks and into weeds until we have good soil. And so, if the incorruptible seed, is more powerful than the soil, I walk back into the room. I see a guy, and he's worshiping because this leader who'd spoken is also the worship leader, and now he's singing and doing the altar call. The
yeah,
whole, if you want to get saved from
yeah,
that stuff, right? I walk in, and I see this guy having an encounter.
mm,
It's like he's highlighted and he's worshiping, and tears are rolling down his cheeks. He's
mm,
experiencing the love of God, and my heavenly Father's highlighting him, so I see that my
mm,
heavenly. And so two things happened. The first was I had said, "Why am I here?" Well, that got settled right away because my immediate said, "Well, if he's here, I can be here."
yeah,
The second thing is the question that is raised when you measure.
mhm,
Why, God, why would you attach an experience to that bullshit?
mm,
On what planet? if I were God, that literally came through my mind. If I were God, I wouldn't meet this guy right now in this circumstance because
Mm.
I wouldn't want him to get trapped in that theology. Instead, what took place there is I watched him and I went, oh, my Heavenly Father is so convinced that an authentic encounter with His love is bigger than bad theology. And
So,
in fact, the further down the road I get, I realize that man wouldn't have come to my church because that man was on the spot in his journey where this church is where he could come. And
mm,
Jesus was like, I'll meet him through that bullshit. I
yeah,
know that that bullshit is going to be something that will lead him in some ways in crazy town
yeah,
because he'll have to strive there. But I know that the encounter will sustain and ultimately bring trans. So for me, that I can put more language around it now. But for me, when I think about ministry or even about interacting, or like you said, some of these conversations that happen on the Facebook, I look at them and I think, okay, as long as kindness, well, we're going to make sure that we're remembering that this
yeah,
Facebook group is for heart to heart connection. We remind them regularly, but let's let this thing play out because I'm convinced that love ultimately will transform the soil. And if we can let love play out, then the soil, whatever it is, if it's rocky or it's pathy or it's weedy, it's getting transformed. And
mm,
anyway, that's that thing that allowed for me to then go, okay, I'm not here to defend. I just get to reveal. But I get what you're saying when it's a publisher or even the group, because there's that. How do you make sure that you're ultimately stewarding and making safe spaces and
yeah. Oh, well, I've only had to turn down a couple of books. One of them was because it was on like a Left Behind book. Very well written, I might add.
right,
I mean, I
right,
read through it and it had my attention. It was
yes,
just,
yeah,
he was a really good writer.
right,
But I can remember being fearful of those things. I can remember
right,
the moment when I woke up 8 years ago in bed, and I heard a trumpet, and it was pitch black in the room, and I heard like a sonic boom, and for a moment, I thought I got
terror,
left behind. Oh shoot, I missed it. I did everything I knew to do. It was just, but now knowing that that trumpet is really for the Jewish people was an awakening blast is what it was
come
called,
on,
and
yeah,
so there was an awakening blast that happened on the inside of me because I got kind of mad that I did everything right. I had
yeah,
my kids in church every week. They
yeah,
were there 3 times a week. And on
yeah,
Wednesday nights in PJs, so I could take them home and put them to bed. They were
uh-huh.
there if they were sick. They were there if they didn't feel like it. I mean, and they weren't allowed to really play with toys. You sit in the
Now
chair, you
Robin, that
listen to the
that
pastor.
sounds like church trauma.
Well, yeah, maybe. Yeah. So, okay, my trauma didn't last. Maybe
Right, I
that's
hear
it.
you, I hear you.
I just let
No,
it go because
right,
I realized they only taught me what they knew.
that's right,
They
that's
didn't
right.
intend to harm me,
No, I love that, yeah,
And so I just let
yeah,
it go and I
yeah,
just walked into something new. But for that moment, thinking I got left behind, I couldn't do a book like that. And
yeah,
so I said no. But for most part, I don't say no to books. I do have to, as long as it's Christ-centered, Trinitarian, that's a big one
yes,
for me. It
yes,
has to start with that relationship,
yeah,
that of the triune God and
yeah,
us, and that
yeah,
everyone's included in that. My authors challenge me sometimes, because I'm also a writer, and so
yeah,
sometimes they write differently than I do, and that's
right,
okay too, but it
yeah,
challenges me.
yeah,
Um, Carla,
yeah,
Carla, if you're watching this, I love you so much. Carla challenged me as a publisher and as a writer, and her book's beautiful.
it
It
is,
really is. And
yeah,
we went back and forth on a whole lot of things because she would say something, and I'm like, okay, I need a source for that one.
right,
I'm not giving sources, Robin. I'm not that kind of writer. I'm reflective. And I thought, well, okay, but I got to publish this. And so we went back and forth and learning to take my hands off of it where it was okay for her to be reflective and it was okay for her to leave things without an answer because I like having an answer. And
yes,
so leaving things open ended where the reader could just think for themselves
right,
and that's not I don't always do that as a writer.
yeah, yeah,
I like to
Yeah.
prove my point.
Right.
Um, and so being, and I don't like to put too many big questions in a reader's hand where now you've put a weight on them, and where
Yeah.
they don't know what to do. What do I do with this?
Right.
So
Right.
there
Yeah.
was a
Yeah. Yeah.
balancing act between Carla and I of learning how to, okay, let's keep your voice, let's keep you authentic through this, and really make this a great book. And it's a good book. It
Yeah,
really
it
is.
is. It is a good book. I love it, and I love. I write in the in between. I like to make such a solid point, and maybe you don't even know I'm making a solid point, so
Mhm.
that when I leave you with the what ifs, there's not really a what if.
Yeah, yeah,
but
I
but
get
I
that.
like to leave you with the what ifs.
Yeah.
But I'm hopeful that I have. But and Carla's even more comfortable. I totally get the. I'll have conversations on the podcast, and as the years have passed, it's become a little bit easier. But in those early years, someone would say something, and I'm like, "Oh, I do not agree." Like
I don't
that
know
is
how
not
you do that.
right. And so, well, I am better at. Well, what I am good at is grabbing the thing I can, and I do this all the time, even on a Facebook. Somebody will come at you, and I can find the thing where we can find agreement, and I'll
Yeah.
grab that, and then I expand that, and I try and bring it back around at least so that we're talking about union. I mean, I had that conversation with, well, I can say it, and I love him to death, but John Eldridge, who
Mhm.
we had on,
Yeah.
and it's made a great impact, for me. I know some folks would like to go after Wild at Heart, but my son's middle name is Wild
Mm,
because we were reading that book. My wife was reading that book.
mm.
She read
Yeah.
it first, and that actually expanded her heart to understand her husband in ways. It was good for our marriage because suddenly she's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm reading about my husband here. I didn't even." And while she had Ethan, about
So
to
good.
come, and so Ethan Wild, so love John, but there was some.
Mm.
We're not on the same page in
Right.
some places, and so there were some things that he was saying. But what was fun is to be able to grab a hold of the union piece that
Yeah.
he was speaking, and then we went there, and so yeah, I do get it though, because early on I'd feel nervous. I don't anymore, but I'd get anxious, like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that we're having this.
Everybody's listening. I know. I know. I know. And I don't
But
want a publishing company with all Robin's books, and all my
right,
mythology.
right,
I don't want that. We do allegories now. We've had an allegory, a fiction book, some poetry books, and so I'm learning, as long as you're staying Christ centered, as long as,
yeah,
it's all built on him, I
yeah,
really I want to hear your voice in this, even if I don't agree,
yeah.
on some things.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. Thank you for giving me a little bit extra
Oh,
time
thank you.
as we're expanding and investigating how to
Love
engage
it.
with
I love
folks. But if you want to talk a little bit about what you're doing, you've got some amazing authors. So share a little bit of that. We'll talk tacos, and then we'll follow back up on the other side.
Okay. Now I don't know where to start. I have my first young author. I
Yes,
want to see more of those. I want to get
yes.
more young authors. I don't think publishers do that enough.
Tell us
Eli,
about that book. Yeah,
Eli Waters. Yeah, Eli
yeah.
Waters I believe he's 13 now.
That sounds about right. He's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
He
He's
is very
awesome.
cool. He's a TWS author. He's writing his first book. It's soon, within the next few months, I believe. They're working on illustrations
Yes.
for that book. But
Yep. We get it. Yep.
we had a sit down, him and I, last year on FaceTime, and he agreed. I charged him a little,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so yeah,
I
so he
heard
can
that
make
story.
money, yeah,
Yeah.
and so he can do that, and then so he has skin in the game, and
Yep. Yep. Yep.
excited, yeah, he can own
Love
it.
it.
It's his, and we did an old school because I don't know if you're allowed to do a written contract with a 12-year-old. I mean, I don't even
Yeah.
know if that's legal. So
You
we
spit
did
in your
old.
hand and he's spit in his, and you just,
Pretty much, yeah. I
yeah.
told him I have three authors I do that with: Steve, Don, and Malcolm. They're old school, no contracts, and so Eli is my next one. But I want to have more young authors. I like that. I want to do a children's writing workshop this year.
Yeah.
I'm really excited. Don't know how to do that, but I'll just get before the
Yeah.
Father and find out how to do
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
do this.
Yeah.
Um, I'm doing more co-authored books this year. Because we do Legacy Society, and are we running out of time? You can tell me
No, no,
anytime.
you're good. No, no, share a little bit. Yeah, go ahead.
Legacy Society, I love. It's one of my passions, and
Yeah,
it's by invitation only, and it's certain authors who have devoted their lives to the gospel. Malcolm Smith is one, Francois and Lydia
yeah,
Dutoy are another, and a
yeah,
new author named John Land, who has done and seen everything. I mean, and he's writing a memoir, um, but we do their books for free. So
yeah.
we do the entire, they don't get any less than any of my other authors get, and we just do it all for free. And we do some co-authored books to help pay for that. We've been doing the Free To series. We did Free to
Yeah.
Give, Free to Gather. This year we're doing Free to Be Free. So I was excited about that one.
Good.
But we're expanding that now. We're doing a poetry book
I saw that.
that's co-authored. Yeah, so that's fun. That's coming out before Easter, Resurrection Life. We're doing an all-women authored book
Oh, fun.
called Finding Your Voice.
Yeah.
That one's coming out this summer. Some great women in that. Felicia Morel,
Oh, good.
Tracy Vanderbush, Brooke
Yes.
Waters.
Oh,
Yeah,
fun. She hadn't
I
told me
real
yet. Cool.
yeah, Lydia Dutoy, her daughter, my daughter. Really excited. There's 20 voices that have come together to
Wow.
do that.
Wow.
So really excited about that one. And then we're going to do some TWS classics. We're going to pull some public domain books. Don't know what it looks like yet, but I have two on my schedule. One for next Christmas or this Christmas called Les Mis, and then the
Uh-huh.
next one, December 2026, A Christmas Carol. And I think we're just going to do like an annotated edition where we do some commentary from people, co-authored,
Yeah.
commentary where you just dive into the grace aspects of it and just bring it to life. So,
Yeah.
really excited about
I
that.
love it. I
Yeah,
love it. I
excited
love
to
it.
build community this year.
And
And
you have
just
been.
I know, I want to do that more.
Yeah.
I like the face-to-face gatherings. The Rethinking God with Tacos conference was fun. It was
It
fun
was.
seeing everybody and
Yeah. Yeah.
people we only see like this,
Yeah.
and we
Yeah.
got to see face-to-face. So we're doing pop-up gatherings. The first one is in March, the weekend of the 21st in Nashville, and we're
Okay.
meeting at a hotel and no agenda, just having meals together,
I
having
like that.
drinks together, exploring Nashville together. I want to do one in Houston and Florida and maybe New Hampshire just throughout the year where they're just the weekend. You
Yeah.
just hang out
I
with
like that.
friends. Yeah,
I like that a
that'll
lot.
be
Yeah.
fun.
That
Yeah,
would be fun.
yeah.
Could do one in Charlotte. Um,
Charlotte would be fun. Yeah, good
right?
tacos.
Yeah, yeah. Guys, if you're listening, so grateful that we get to do this. I can't recommend Robin enough. RobinSmit.com, the Writers Society Publishing.com. Did I get that
Yep,
right?
yep.
And buy her books. Go look at the books there. Bill Wynn has a book that
Oh,
I'm
so
supposed to
good.
read. I've got a handful of books. I've got this one by Mario.
Yep.
How do you pronounce his last name?
Andre, I think it's Andre.
Okay. Yeah, I think so too.
Bill's is like Mark Twain. It's got that
Yes,
Mark Twain feel all the way through it. It is
yes,
beautiful, and it's
yes,
so redemptive all the way through.
yes.
It's
I
beautiful.
I'm always looking. When these days, I'm not actively looking for guests just because there's so many folks on the list but back in the day when I was actively looking, I would go look at who was on your roster. But I know that whoever's on your roster, they're on my they're on
Yeah.
mine as well, and so those are some of the guys that I want to have on the podcast.
Oh,
Maybe Carla as well. So
he's the dean now at GGS.
I had heard that. I'd
Yeah,
heard
yeah.
that. And tell us a little bit about GAN and what's happening there.
Oh, I love GAN. It's doing well. We're just coming up on our first year anniversary.
Yeah.
Gosh, I don't know how many hosts we have these days. It's a lot. We're now on uh, Apple TV, Amazon Fire. Lane handles all of this stuff. Roku. We have the website. We're doing on the website now. You can watch it, but you can also there's articles now that are
Yeah.
being multiple articles a day that are coming out. We've got a bunch of things in store in the future. It's just really great. It's really good. I love the shows. I try and watch it as often as I can, but there's
It's a
just
lot.
nothing else out there like that, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's great.
Yeah.
Your show is awesome. Your program's awesome. Don Keithley's got a program. I have one, but I haven't had time to do it. I wanted to interview all my authors, but I've only done two so far. So it's kind
It's a
of
lot. It's surprising how much it is. It takes a little bit of work, but I love it. I do a show with Baxter Kruger as well,
yeah,
called Across All Worlds, and
yeah.
that's been life giving just to do it. But
Oh yeah, Deb
we've seen
Alexander's on there.
dubs there. Yes.
Hart,
Yeah.
John Crowder,
Yeah.
Rod Williams. I mean, there's so many wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful shows on there. So,
Yes. So good. So
yeah,
good. I love every time we get to connect and catch up, and maybe we'll find you to pop up, or
I would
if not,
love that. I would
yeah,
love that. I'm excited about that. And hey, if anybody wants to come on GAN, talk to Don Keithley. He's the guy to go to.
that's right.
Yep.
That's right. And we'll try and have a link for that on the liner notes.
Yeah.
But we got to talk tacos because that's in the title. That's what we
Yeah.
do. So, you do you have a taco story for me?
I do. We
I
just
came prepared.
Christmas Eve, we decided to do tacos for dinner for
Yeah.
Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
Normally, we do pasta or something, and we did tacos. And my son and my son-in-law helped, and we did. Is it birria tacos?
Yeah.
Oh,
Really good.
those were so good. Oh my gosh, we cooked that sauce all day and put dried
With the
peppers
peppers
in
in
it.
it. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
so good. And it was amazing. They were probably
Yeah.
the best tacos we've had. It was a
Yeah.
lot of work for Christmas Eve, but
Yes, yes. My wife made them. Karen made them maybe 6 months ago for the first time. A lot of work,
yep.
and I say that I didn't do any of it, but she let me know. Yeah, there's some time that goes into it, but yeah, so good.
So good. We used short ribs for it, and they were just so
Oh
tender.
my
So
gosh,
good. Yeah.
perfect. That's
Yep.
perfect. All right, so let's do this. Share where folks can find you. I know it's at robinsmith.com and
Yep. Robinsmith.com or the Writers Society Publishing.com.
yep. We've talked tacos. We've talked how to find you. We've had some
Yep.
beautiful conversations about
Thank
union. I think there's a lot of life here, and
you. Yeah.
looking forward to the next time we're face to face. But Robin,
Awesome.
it's good to see you, and so thankful that you
Thank
come on the
you.
podcast.
Thank you. Appreciate your friendship.
Yeah, same here.